Hello and welcome to Pensions in 10 with me, David Brooks, and my colleague, Simon Kew. This week, we talk about the delayed pensions review and we look ahead to 2025.
Dave, we had some interesting news from the government over the weekend. It broke in the Financial Times. What did break?
So we've been awaiting imminently, as we've been told a few times by Emma Reynolds and Rachel Reeves, that there would be part two to the pensions review. So we've had part one, which is talking about investing in UK assets and productive finance and all those sorts of things. And then part two would be a more of an in-depth look into the pension systems, how adequacy works, whether there's pensions are adequate, incentives, and all these sorts of things, and to make the pension system better. And that has now been delayed with no date of when it will come through again, although we might anticipate some point in the next year, so by the summer, perhaps next year. So, and that's been met with I'd say a mixed reaction. A lot of people disappointed that yet again some kind of review has been delayed. And that's fair enough, I suppose. We'd all like to get on with it. But I'm a bit more, I don't know, if sanguine is not too pompous a word to describe my view. But
I think it's a great word, Dave. Sanguine is fabulous.
So I'm relatively sanguine about this. I think there's a lot on the government's plate already, and employers and the industry dealing with national insurance contribution rises. We've got a pension schemes bill coming through. Already the talk of VFM and making pension schemes better from that perspective. So there's still a lot going on in pensions to try to improve them. And I would expect the government to be using this time to have perhaps some more conversations with the industry on a sort of a softer basis to try to get a handle on what the problem is and how best to go about resolving it. As far as I see it, there's kind of, I don't know, 3 or 4 interconnecting different areas that they could talk about. When talking about adequacy, state pension has to be a part of that conversation. So obviously the government has done work with regards to pension credit, increasing that. A lot of that was in response to the removal of the winter fuel payment. Obviously with the triple lock, which is meant to stay for the length of this government, I think, until the next election. Again, the future of that, and then you start getting into the future of, we talked about last week about state pension ages. And then you look at auto enrolment, and everybody would like to see more money going in to auto enrolment in some way, and how you structure that, but then also how you target it, because you could argue, as I believe, that auto enrolment has been a caveated success. It's definitely increased take up, but it hasn't necessarily increased or improved outcomes for individuals. So is it doing what it should be doing for low and medium income workers? Is it worth them being in a pension? Should we think about other things for them to save in as people are working? The sort of things you're defaulted into. So you've got, you're in it and you're having £40,000 when you reach 65. Is that going to change your life? Would it not have been better to have a system which gave you more money during your working life, more money you could use when you needed it, rather than having a relatively small nest egg at the end? Is that really the point? Do we know if auto enrolment is still targeting the right people? We've got 10 million people not in auto enrolment, but are we worried about those people? And who are the people that are in, and how much they're saving? Is that right? And you could argue that people who are better paid and are worried about their adequacy could just pay more. So you think about that as well. Also, the tax incentives. The government could potentially do more and say, the flat rate relief might come back as a conversation, because that would, if it was set at 30%, could be very helpful for lower income workers who would actually see a boost from the government for their top-ups, for their pension environment top-up, and that wouldn't impact employers as much. And so there are a few other things they could do, and then how that all works together, how the dashboard actually will work, how will it help people connect with their pensions and make good decisions and give them support. And that's before we get into talking about housing and long-term healthcare and those kind of things as well. So it is a massive topic, and actually the government taking a breath and saying, well, we're quite busy. We've got a pension schemes bill to get through. We've got some other things to deal with. Well, let's have some more detailed conversations behind the scenes with stakeholders, and then before we actually unleash what we're intending to talk about in a wider sense.
Yeah, I agree, Dave. Some of the comments in the press, and we say this quite regularly, the commentators are being unhelpful, I think. This sort of mock horror. I think one comment was, it's deeply depressing. No, it isn't. having no money is deeply depressing. But being on the breadline, not being able to feed your family, that's deeply depressing. Pausing a review is not deeply depressing. And as you say, I think for many reasons, it's a very sensible thing to do. When we were talking about this, when we were sort of planning what we were going to say, and yes, viewer, listener, we do actually plan this. We don't throw it together, you know. I was saying, like, if you draw a ridiculously hot bath, and you're thinking, I'm really looking forward to a bath, right? I really need a bath. I'm looking forward to luxuriating in my bath. And you put your foot in and you go, actually, this is boiling hot. This is really hurting. I'm not liking this. You don't then throw yourself into the bath because you were looking forward to the bath. You take your foot out, you reassess, and you go, maybe I need to put some cold water in there. So that's what you do. Exactly the same with this review, right? They've launched the first part. And we know there was a bit of a not a rush, but they announced that the incoming government announced that there would be this pensions review. They undertook the first part. The elements of that first review they can then put into the pension schemes bill, which you've mentioned, Dave. The second part wasn't time bound. They did say that they were going to launch it before the end of the year, but it is, as you say, a vast topic. And to really get under the skin of it, we need to look at what we want the pension system to do. What do we want it to provide? Is it currently providing that? No, is the short answer to that. If people are earning a good amount of money and they're what's described as wealthy or well off, and I'm not talking about the top 1-2%, I'm talking about people that are earning a good wage, we don't need to focus on them. Tinker around the edges, perhaps, a little bit of help where it's needed, but they can afford an IFA if they need one. They can go into tax planning and all of that sort of thing. It's the people that are minimum wage earning and the much sort of smaller wage earning end of the scale. They're the people that we really need to focus on to make sure that when they get to retirement, if they get to retirement, and I'm not going to go on about state pension age rises, I could, but we'd be here till next Christmas. If they get to retirement, then they need to be retiring in a comfortable position. So let's focus on that, get the conversations in the right place rather than worrying about the people that we see in the press either saying this is deeply depressing or people. There was one story, Dave. I've got an £800,000 pension pot. I might get charged inheritance tax. Should I start spending it now? If you've got 800 grand in your pension pot, my God, you've got other things to worry about than inheritance tax. Yeah, let's focus on the people that really need the help, not the people that are just making the noise.
Yep. Okay, Simon. So we thought we'd have a little look ahead into 2025. And pick our own top 3 things we're looking forward to seeing happen in 2025. And I think you're going first. So you give us your top 3 and then I'll do mine.
Indeed, Dave, it's time to dust off our crystal balls. 2025, what I would, and well done for not completely cracking up when I said that, Dave. What am I looking forward to in 2025? Well, apart from a golf trip, which I have booked, but that's not pensions related, so we'll park that one. The pension schemes bill, much has been said about it. We don't know what's going to be in it. We can have a guess of a few things, but we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. So personally, I'm really particularly excited. I think that's probably too strong a word, excited. I'm curious. Dave, I'm curious as to what's going to be in the pension schemes bill. So that's number 1. Number 2, dear regulator in Brighton, what the hell does more prudential mean? I'm looking forward to finding out what exactly they mean by that. Are they going to go down a rules-based rather than risk-based approach? What are they going to do? I mean, we've looked through the corporate plan, which was absolutely no help whatsoever. So let's see what they actually do. Let's see what guidance comes out from the regulator as to exactly what more prudential means. And then lastly, I think we've seen encouraging signs of DWP and the Treasury working together. I mean, obviously, Emma Reynolds, the Minister for Pensions, is also has a Treasury brief as well, so that's going to help. There's much more crossover between the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, talking about pensions, vice versa. So, yeah, more collaboration between the Department of Work and Pensions and His Majesty's Treasury, I think is something that I am actually very much looking forward to, because for so long, pensions policy has been stymied by the Treasury. So if they're both working together, hopefully pensions policy will actually stick. But Dave, that's enough about my ramblings. What are your top three for 2025?
On my top three, number one, as you know, big fan of the Ombudsman. So I'm looking forward to seeing more from their determinations around how they're dealing with scams. So a couple of stories a couple of weeks ago, we had two big stories when they were stopping scams. They do seem to be on the front line with their dishonesty unit. So their battle against scams does seem to be via the Ombudsman. So I'm hoping they catch some more people and stop more scams from happening. In addition to that, I'd hope Margaret Snowden's petition gets the signatures it needs, so that the scam, well, the issue with scams where members, victims get hit by tax charges, as well as what the scammers do to them. I think that's really important and should be debated and hopefully legislated against by the government. I hope I write mine down. Second one, dashboards. So it's a big year for the dashboard. So we're actually going to have pension schemes connecting as of April, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how those interactions go and those connections go. Hopefully everything goes smoothly, and I think if we get a good start, so all the big schemes connect happily, then we might get some information about when the dashboard activation point, I think that's what DAP stands for, I always forget, is going to be. So the sooner we get that date, the better. I think getting that date will really help other pension schemes further down the line engage with it and understand this is going to go live. You're not just connecting to an ecosystem with no one looking at it. I think the motivation of actually having it going live when members can look at it, I think would help the discussions and help progress. And finally, VFM. I think VFM is going to be the continuing story. In the absence of the adequacy discussion, VFM is the area where the government are focusing on helping DC schemes work better for members, no matter what size or shape it is, albeit they're looking to get bigger ones, but for the time being, it's what we've got. So making those schemes better, give better returns, interact with members better, more value for what they're paying for. I think that would be, well, it's going to be really interesting. And also the regulator needs to get into that debate as well. We've had the SCA, we need the regulator getting involved. So I think it's going to be a busy year for DC consultants and dealing with all that stuff.
Well, dear viewer and listener, that brings 2024 to a close as far as Pensions in 10 is concerned. Thank you so much for joining us throughout the year. Thanks for your comments, your feedback, the jokes. I've had a few about the clothes that I've been wearing. Heaven only knows what people are going to say about my Christmas jumper. But hey, I can take it. I've got broad shoulders. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back very early part of January. Do keep your eyes peeled for when our next episode will be there. In the meantime, we hope you and your families have a wonderful festive break, and we'll see you in 2025.